Welcome to another edition of 100% Canucks. John Shannon here, soon to be joined by Landon Ferraro. And our guest today is Adrian Aucoin, who was a draft pick of the Canucks in 1992. And with the theme of what's going on in the rest of the world this week, was an Olympian. Played for Canada at the Olympic Winter Games in Lillehammer, Norway in 1994. Some of us view those the greatest Olympics of all time because it was like having a whole Olympics in Whistler or Huntsville, Ontario. It was just a cool thing. Or, you know, could you imagine having the Olympics in Penticton? It would have been a cool thing to happen. And Adrian Aucoin was part of that for Canada's Olympic team that went all the way to the gold medal game and came second. So, which is always strange in Olympics. You lose to get the silver and you win to get the bronze. But that's another story for another day. Just a reminder, the Canucks still cannot practice. The team is still on hiatus. They will be allowed to practice as of 2 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon, Vancouver time. But for now, reminiscing with a Canuck with a big shot. Adrian Aucoin on this edition of 100% Canucks.
NHL TV is now on DAZN. Hockey lives here.
Here we go.
Watch every game from every team. The best players in the world. And the coldest plays on ice. Watch up to 4 games at once for the ultimate NHL experience. Sign up now at DAZN.
Welcome back to 100% Canucks. Landon and John, joined by a Canuck draft pick way back when. Adrian Aucoin has joined us from his home in Chicago. Adrian, thanks for the time.
Oh, glad to join you guys. Thanks for having me.
Before we talk about your time in Vancouver and being drafted by the Canucks and the effect of guys like Jack McElhargy on your life, I think we should talk about the Olympics. I mean, here we are. We're in the Olympic window. We are in the Olympic window, and you were on a really special team in 1994 for Canada, a team that nobody gave much credit to before the game started, and there you were in the gold medal game, your team. What was that experience like in Norway?
Well, it was amazing, obviously. One of the best things about it for me was I was kind of obviously one of the younger guys. I didn't have a huge role on the team, so I got to experience the whole Olympics from not only a player, but also from a fan, because I took the opportunity to go watch a lot of the other events. It was pretty, even though like I actually hung out with Corey Hirsch all the time, who was our starting goalie and probably the star of the show, but we definitely took a lot of time to do the other things and to enjoy the whole experience. But it was quite a fun tournament, of course. It was definitely an amazing year and a half build up for it. For myself, back when we used to have a full-time national team, but it was awesome.
Just one more for me, Landon, before you jump in, because you two Olympians can talk to each other all day. I was in charge of television production for Canada at those games, and I viewed it as the greatest Olympic Games. And I've been to 9. I view it as the greatest Olympic Games I've ever been to, because it was like having the whole Olympics in Whistler. Yeah. Lillehammer was not a big town. The second town, Hammer, was about 60 kilometers away, not a big town. And then you got to actually play a hockey game or be part of the Canadian team in a cave. Do you remember that?
Yeah. It was so neat because obviously, as Team Canada historically does it so well, is they let us bring all our families over. So my dad came over, and he got to experience it just as much as I did, but also because, like you say, the setting was so unique. I don't quote me on this, but I think it was like Lillehammer was a town of like 10,000 people or something that small. Mm-hmm. Everybody left town and rented out their homes. And then, of course, going to the other rink, which was carved out of the mountain, which I'm not a little tidbit, but our medals actually have a piece of the rock that was excavated from that mountain as well, which is super neat to have. But it was, you could walk everywhere. Even the transit system was easy to take, the shuttle buses. The village was amazing. I have not witnessed any other Olympics, but from what I hear, it definitely went down as one of the best. And I think it went down as one of the least hitches that could possibly go wrong. I just don't hear anything negative about that Olympics, which was pretty amazing.
Well, I guess sometimes smaller is better, right? Like they could just focus on it and have fun. I see your jersey's up behind you. Where's the medal?
So it's funny. I was talking to Rod Brathwaite, who's texting me. He's like, "Hey, make sure you have the medal." Unfortunately, it's in my basement, framed with my Olympic jersey and a team picture. And, it is a little bit of a regret that I didn't have it more accessible. A lot of my friends and neighbors have come to look at it and, get to see it. But I wish I kind of put it in some kind of removable thing. So, it's kind of cool when people can put it around their neck and stuff. So I still have to circle back with that one.
It seemed like a great idea when you were doing it, I bet, though. Like the aesthetics of it.
Yeah. When I was in Arizona, I've never had any of my memorabilia up at all in our house. We just, mostly pictures. I have 5 kids, so it's all pictures of the kids everywhere. And my kids were getting to the age where I'd be like super cool, and I had all these jerseys and all this stuff. So the 2 behind me are my 1,000th game celebration. This is a desk that the team bought me in Arizona. That's my first game, and that's my 1,000th game over there. And over on the wall over here, you can't see it, but it has all the teams and the silver stick and all the stuff that's the players in that game signed. And then in my basement, I have, each team I played for with a picture. And of course, the Olympic team has got the medal in it. I have a World Junior jersey with my gold medal on that one too. And like I said, I wish I would have rethunk it a little bit just to have more access to the medals, because I think people really like to see them, especially the Olympic medal.
I'm curious, in Lillehammer, a lot of us knew this was going to be the last time that the quote-unquote national team would play for Canada and that the pros were going to play in Japan. Did you guys have a sense of that?
A little bit, but, like you said, we were kind of such a unique story because, obviously future Hall of Famer Paul Kariya, Peter Nedved, the rest of us were a few young guys that were on our way up, but a lot of the other guys were kind of had played in Europe, were looking for a second life. It was really the pinnacle of their careers. So there wasn't that much outside noise for us. And, Tom Rennie did such a good job of kind of keeping that perspective. And I don't know the exact number, but if you look at the year and a half buildup, we probably had over 100 players come and go from that team as over a year and a half long tryout. So especially, in those days without social media and the rest of it, we really didn't know that much. And we just and I probably was a little naive being young, but it didn't seem to creep into our mindset at all.
I was going to ask about that because, you get drafted after a year at Boston University, and then instead of, turning pro or going back, you go to the national team and you play the year and a half of there. Like, that had to be stressful with that long of a tryout. Like, what was that whole time like?
Well, once again, being naive and young, I was kind of lucky where a lot of these guys, that was their last kick of the can, where I hopefully was, it was just kind of a runway for me to kind of move on. But I kind of saw it as a no-lose situation. Back then, even though we got paid, we were still considered amateur. So it was more, covering our living costs. So I could have went back to school. Jack Parker at BU was not happy because I left kind of in the last hour in August. I'll give you the Coles notes briefly. It was, so I got invited to the World Junior Camp the summer of '92. And I think with the exception of Paul Kariya, who wasn't even in college yet, I might have been like the only NCAA guy there. So I still in the back of my mind think I was kind of a token invite. And I was a fifth rounder, and World Juniors in Canada, it's all first, second rounders. And I had a really, really good camp, strong camp. And from there, Paul Henry, who everyone knows in the hockey world, he saw me, and by the end of the week, offered me a contract to play that first year with the national team, the year before the Olympic year. So that happened, and then I had to make that decision. And it kind of seemed like I said a no-brainer, just because I could go back to BU or I could go back to any school. Back then, I don't really know what the exact rule was, but I just knew that I was not giving up my eligibility. So if I didn't make the Olympic team, and ultimately the goal was to make the NHL, but it didn't seem attainable at that time anyways, and it was just kind of a stepping stone. And gladly it all worked out well for me. And then right after the Olympics, I ended up signing pro, which was kind of a dream come true. As you know, was never, because it was amateur. The Olympics were not really a dream back then for most. It was always the NHL, but it ended up being a short-term dream. And it was, like I said, it was amazing.
So every 4 years when people talk about Olympics, you just have a wry smile and said, oh yeah, I've played in those.
Yeah, well, it is, Chicago's, so where I'm living now, it's a great town. I live in a nice neighborhood in the western suburbs, and it's truthfully not really a hockey community. I would say Chicago is definitely a hockey town, but a lot of most of my neighbors here who are, in their early 50s and around my age, they did not grow up playing hockey. So they would not know my path to the NHL. And most of them do know now that I played in the NHL, but, even walking down the street, we've got a couple of dogs, we walk them all the time. Most people would not know what I did. But it does come up this time of year, and obviously my close friends and neighbors here all know it, so it's pretty exciting.
It is fun. Like mine was just the last Olympics, and so this is the first time that they've been on since. And watching the opening ceremonies, does it hit you hard still when that comes? I wasn't ready for it, but just kind of getting the tingles of walking into the opening ceremonies again.
Oh, absolutely. And the nice thing about us is because the previous Olympics was in '92, so it was only a 2-year gap. And
right.
We would have a lot of those guys come and talk to us and get us ready for it. So we really went in, with a little bit of knowledge of how it was going to go down. We actually used to go for a lot of team walks, because they're like, hey, when you get to the village, you're going to be walking a lot. There was a lot of preparation for not just the actual games, but just for the complete environment. But when you do, like you said, Landon, when you watch the opening ceremonies, it gives you goosebumps, and it's pretty amazing to be a part of that. Unfortunately, but fortunately, we weren't a part of the closing ceremonies because they were at the same day of our game, because we were the last event. But I have seen them online and on television. But the opening ceremonies was truly special, and the amount of athletes from other countries we met was also something pretty special.
Hockey players are never part of the closing. Hockey players are never part of the closing ceremonies at Winter Games. They never.
Yeah, because it's always the last event.
Last.
I was going to say our team had time to go to them, but I would have taken your place instead.
Yeah.
All right, let's. The name of this podcast is 100% Canucks. It's not 100% Olympics. So take us back to draft day. Were you one of those guys as a fifth round pick? Were you hanging around the draft floor, or what were you doing?
Well, there was a build up to it, because I was actually eligible the year before. So I'm not sure if you remember the draft back then. To be a first year guy, you had to go in the first 3 rounds. So back then, our only hockey knowledge of draft position or anything was through the hockey news. And I was one of those guys who was kind of, they predict the first 3 rounds, and then I was the best of the rest. They're like, oh, he could go first round, he could go third, whatever. So I made my way to Buffalo with one of my buddies, my college roommate, Stevie Thornton, who's running the Belfast Giants overseas now. And we sat through the first 3 rounds of the draft and didn't hear my name. And, actually tried to go to a bar and couldn't get in because we didn't have fake ID. So we just drove back to Ottawa, and that was the end of my draft eligibility year. So it wasn't super glamorous, but hey, it happens. Then I went to BU, had a decent year, knew I could get drafted, didn't know where. And because of all the stories I heard, I'm like, I went to Montreal with my dad and some, a few friends. and basically said, I'm gonna wait 5 rounds, because I hear these people waiting all 15 rounds, not getting their name called. And I said 5 rounds is kind of going to be the max, and then we'll just go from there. And I think it was, so it was Matthew Barnaby, I believe, got drafted in the 4th round. So he came up and grabbed me and said, "Hey, are you going to stick around much longer?" And I said, it's almost the bottom of the 5th round here. I said, "Let's go." So I was walking out of the building when Vancouver called my name, still in the building though, and looked up and saw my dad, and he jumped up. He didn't realize I was gone, so he didn't know who to hug. Ran back up. As I'm running back up, Steve Tambellini grabbed me and just said, "Hey, we got to go to the table." And I went and met all the brass and shook everybody's hands, went backstage, did some interviews. So, and it being in Montreal with the drinking age of 18, it's probably one of the only draft places where all the draft picks can actually go out and enjoy the different things. So we had a good time. There was so many friends and family there. It was really exciting.
Mine was Montreal as well. It was a fun time. It was a decent little introduction into everything.
Yeah. Did you catch up to Barnaby?
I did. He actually waited for me. Yeah. So he just stood there. And And then there was a few other guys that got drafted. And I still think the funniest thing of that draft is, a lot of times you go to these after parties and stuff. Back then we didn't have after parties. We would just go out. And most of the first rounders were still wearing their jerseys at the bars, which I was like, okay, you don't see that every day, but it was quite acceptable in Montreal.
And it's funny you say that, because so I slipped through. I wasn't very happy, and then I'm like, I'm in Montreal. I got to go out and celebrate with everyone else. We go. There was one guy wearing his jersey at the bar. Won't say who, but just the look of it was hilarious.
Come on. Who was it? Come on. He's 18.
Come on.
Well, actually, what do I care? He's had a great career. It's Calvin DeHaan.
Yeah,
he was wearing his Islander jersey, just having a time on the dance floor.
That's awesome.
But you said it, so you go to the Olympics or the Olympic team after you're drafted. So it's not the standard, go to the American League or keep developing. I guess first off, what was the conversation between you and Vancouver through this time? Clearly they would have supported it.
Oh, absolutely. To be honest, back then it's not like today, right? There was no development. There was no, there's no cell phones. So it would basically be through your agent. My agent was Larry Kelly, who had most of the Ottawa guys. And they were happy about it. I was a 5th rounder, so it wasn't like I was the 1st or 2nd rounder where they had to totally monitor it and they were banking on me making the NHL. So it was definitely a step up from college. And truthfully, it was. Back then, there were so many players in Europe that were of NHL caliber that just never came over. We'd play the German national team, and they had their captain had been playing 20 years pro. And, it was just it was these seasoned veteran pros that were just so good. I played against Peter Stastny.
That was Tommy Kuhnhackel's dad. That was Tommy Kuhnhackel's dad, wasn't it?
It could have been, yeah. And I'm horrible with names, but it was just, even the craziest part is we played the Norwegian team, and half those guys were better than when I came back and started playing, in the minors, half the Norwegian guys were better than most of the guys in the minors. It was really, really cool. So there was not as much tracking development, obviously, back then, but they were definitely happy. And ultimately that was I was basically a lock to make the world junior team because I was playing on the men's national team. Most kids were all playing junior. I don't think we had college. Maybe we had one call, maybe Paul Kariya was in college that year. But, playing against grown men, not being ever the best player on the ice, but just having to keep up to them made a world of difference. And it definitely helped, my path.
Just as an aside about the Kuhnhackel story is I've never forgotten the name, because in all the years I did the Olympics before that, every time we do an Olympics, the German broadcasters would come over and ask us, when is Eric Kuhnhackel going to make the NHL? And of course, Kuhnhackel's now in his mid-30s, and if he's not making it by now, he's not making it.
No, it's I don't know why, but we spent probably more time in Germany than any other country. They would have tournaments there, and we would always fly through there. And they play, it's kind of like, I mean, obviously Germany's a great athletic country, but we were still kind of thinking of the old, German Olympic teams, summer and winter sports back then. So they were so disciplined and worked so hard. They just didn't have, the depth that we had, obviously.
So when you sign, like you play in the Olympics, you sign out and then you finish the year in Syracuse and play a couple playoff games as well. Like, was that just a whirlwind at that point? Like going to the Olympics, now you're a pro, you're in another new city, all of it. Or again, were you just young and it was the next thing you were doing and you were having fun?
Yeah, a little bit of both. A little bit of both. So the Olympics end, and we didn't. Obviously, we knew. Like I said, the two real studs on the team were Korea and Nedved. So we knew that they were going to move on. Everything was going to be great. But there was a lot of guys. Dwayne Norris was a guy who went right up to Quebec. Like a bunch of guys. I think Chris Therien went to Hershey, but then got called up to Philly. So I don't think I was of that level yet. And it was before Syracuse. We were actually in Hamilton. So I sign, I go to Hamilton. I remember, back then getting a pretty good bonus for a fifth rounder just because of everything that happened and all the hype of the Olympic team. And I showed up in like a 1984 hatchback Honda Civic, that my dad had rebuilt, so it wasn't super glamorous, and Hamilton was great. But, leading up to what we were talking about with the Canucks, Jack McElhargy was the coach. And he could tell that it was a little like he knew probably better, obviously, than I knew. He could tell that I was overwhelmed and I didn't even realize I was overwhelmed. And a lot of it had to do with like, hey, now you're playing pro hockey. Like the Olympics was great. It was amazing. Obviously, the build up to it is we played in a dozen tournaments, 50, 60 exhibition games. But now it's a business. And he kind of had to, guide me through that a little bit, which he was great with. And Hamilton, as it's a steel town, it's a rough town, so it was definitely a birth by fire, jumping right in there, especially at the end of the season, trying to go on a playoff run. At the same time, watching the Canucks go on their '94 Cup run, which I didn't get called up to. I was a little too young and fresh for that, but. It was definitely something to watch.
What did Jack mean to you over the time that you were around him? Because you and he went parallel for a while, whether it was Hamilton or Syracuse or even with the big club.
Yeah. Well, Jack was my first professional coach. Obviously, we all know him for his toughness and his amazing personality and his big heart. And I definitely had some lumps along the way with them, just the way I played. And like I alluded to earlier, I came in, I'm like, oh yeah, we won a silver medal in the Olympics. I'm a young guy. This is going to be, I didn't think it was going to be easy, but I didn't realize how hard it was going to be. So mostly that first year was a little bit of a wash, right? And by the time we moved to Syracuse that summer, there was a massive turnover. I bet you 80% of the guys were a new team in Syracuse. All of a sudden, I wasn't really one of the younger guys. I was kind of right in the middle of the pack. And I think he had very high expectations for me, which helped me a lot. Sometimes, especially back then, I didn't, once again, really know what being a pro was like. Even though I had some great mentors on the Olympic team, it was definitely still a culture change. And Jack definitely guided me with an iron fist, which ended up helping me a lot.
So you get through that year, and then you have 30 points in 70 games in the minors, but you also get your first NHL game and then get into playoff games as well. For your first full year, you had to be pretty happy with that, I assume.
Well, yeah. So, back then it was kind of crazy. Guys didn't go up and down all the time. Obviously, we weren't flying privates. there wasn't ways to reach guys, especially being in Syracuse and Vancouver. The proximity was like, if you're coming up, it had to mean something. And, we knew, I think we had just won a big game. And of course, back then we used to celebrate like there was no tomorrow on a Sunday night. But Jack basically told us, hey, there's some injuries up there, so you guys might want to take it easy. And I got a call, I think it was like 1 a.m, that I was going to go up to Vancouver, which is obviously a thrill of a lifetime. I'm kind of switching gear. Sorry, I'm getting my timelines mixed up because the first time I actually went up, was at the end of the year of my first year. I was thinking of when I got called up for good. So the first time I got called up for good, our season was over in Syracuse. I actually went to try out for the national team for the World Championships. There was 4 Canucks. There was myself, Dane Jackson, Dan Kessler, and Mark Watton. And we all got cut from the World Championships team, which is kind of a little weird because Tom Rennie was the coach and I had just played with him for the Olympics. So irrelevant how that went down, it ended up being probably the best thing that happened to me because Vancouver, it was a lockout year and they were going on into playoffs. They had 1 game left against San Jose and they were going to rest all their top guys. So I was already back home in Ottawa and Mike Penny called me and said, hey, we're going to call you up. Even though I don't know if you know I hadn't skated for a week and a half at all. I didn't have my gear. It was still in Syracuse. So I had to drive to Syracuse, get my gear, fly out to San Jose, meet them there, and then play in the last game of the year, which ended up being an amazing experience because San Jose, I believe, had to tie or win to make the playoffs. So the building was going crazy. I ended up scoring on my first shot, which was pretty cool. It definitely relieved a little bit of the tension. And that playoffs, I ended up playing in 4 games because of injury. I played in Game 7 against St. Louis. Once again, small tidbit, I scored on my first shot, which was pretty cool again to calm the nerves. We beat St. Louis in Game 7, then we got swept by Chicago. So not to bore you with the details, next year I come back to camp. I think I'm playing, for a spot on the team, which I was, and I had a great camp. And Rick Lee was the coach. And he told me, he's like, hey, you're doing great. I think I played in 6 or 7 exhibition games. And the write-ups in the newspaper, which is the only way we knew stuff, was like, hey, this kid came to make the team. It looks like he's got a spot. He's been one of the bright lights in the camp. Rick calls me in. I'm dressed to go out for warm-up of the 7th exhibition game. And he goes, for the first 6 games, you were our best D. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. He goes, but, you haven't been practicing well and you kind of seem to falter a little bit at the end of last game, so we're going to send you to minors. And I was floored. But of course, back then, the waiver wire was massive, right? And I was so young. All the other D had to clear waivers, and I didn't. So I went down, and that's where Jack Mack really took me under his wing. And that's where, I go back to my original story of it was February or January or whenever, and Jack is like, hey, there's some injuries, and I end up getting called up. And that was my last time in the minors.
So just to be clear, the sweater behind you, the Canucks sweater behind you, is the sweater from the San Jose game?
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kenny Flagger gave you that?
Patty O'Neill.
Patty O'Neill. Okay.
Patty O'Neill.
So your time in Vancouver, how would you put it in a single sentence?
Well, I was there for parts of 6 years and I had 5 different head coaches. Wow. So that says a lot about what our team was like. And probably what I was like too. It goes back to the first getting called up, and you see it a lot with rookies. Their first year is pretty good. You're working hard. Everything's new. Everything's fresh. I played well enough to be a part of that team. Second year, you just come in with a little more swagger, with a little more confidence, but you don't realize now people know you. Now they know how to play against you. Now the grind is real. So I had to learn on the go. Back then we didn't have as many, let's say, many conversations about just how to act, nowadays, you have mental coaches, skill coaches, even the assistant and head coaches, they know everything about you. Like Pat Quinn was great, but being a rookie, he didn't have much to say to me as the GM and then coach. So Rick Lee was our first coach, then Pat Quinn, who had to fire his best friend, Rick Lee. It was one of the scariest moments of my life, and seeing Pat Quinn that furious with us because he was like a dad to all of us. And, we felt horrible that he had to fire Rick and because we were underachieving. But then then Tom Rennie came, was a familiar face, and I was kind of moving up and then battled with a few injuries. And then Mike Keenan came, where it was definitely really rough. I was not one of his guys at all. I think I only played in maybe 30 some odd games that year out of the 80 between injuries and scratched. And then had a real heart to heart with him, and he set me straight again. He probably gave me one of the best talking tos I've had. The first 3 years of my time there, I had Jurgen Lumi, Dave Babich, Dana Merzen, Brett Hedican as my mentors. And I was fine being the fifth player, the fifth D-man in that rotation. And Keenan told me it wasn't good enough. And I was kind of selling myself short. And until I figured that out, I wasn't going to play. And he expected me to try to be the number one D on the team. And that's when I ended up scoring 23 goals and having a career year. And it was great. And then Mark Crawford took over and things fell out of favor a little bit. And that's kind of when I ended up moving on and Berkey traded me.
Were you happy to be traded?
I was, yeah. Crow, who I think was a very good coach, we did not see eye to eye. And a lot of it was me being stubborn. A lot of it was me playing old school. One of the examples I have is, as a D-man, when you go in the corner, I used to try to break a guy's wrist by slashing him, and he was always big on stick on puck. And that's the way the game is played now. And I thought he was crazy because I'm like, well, it's not going to intimidate anybody. They're not going to be, worried about me coming at them. And he was like, you have to take away lanes. And but he was a very smart coach. He was a tough coach for sure. But on the right side, at that time, it was Matthias Oland, Ed Jovanovski, and myself. And I think I might have been getting paid more than those guys, but they were clearly, some amazing players. So it just kind of worked out that way.
And, realistically, you get traded to Tampa and then you get moved again that summer. That must have been a lot happening at once. But, kind of like you talking before, saying it was the best thing that could have happened that you didn't make that world championship team. You end up, having 3 of your best years on the island. Yeah,
well, I think if there was 30 teams in the league, Tampa was 29th and the Islanders were 30th. So it was kind of a what is happening. And of course, as you know, playing on the island, back then it wasn't great. It was the old Nassau Coliseum. The teams would stay at the old Marriott across the parking lot. So you'd have to walk through 1,000 fans and autographs, and it was gray and rainy. So that was my only knowledge of Long Island. I'm like, this place is, in my world, it was like, it's a dump. And I had no idea about it. My 2 months in Tampa was great. We weren't a great team, but I really loved playing for John Tortorella. At the trade deadline, I got traded before the trade deadline. And, why am I blanking on our GM? He was in Buffalo forever. I'll think of it. He basically said myself, Hattie Boulin, and Vinny LeCavalier were the only 3 that were untouchable on that team. So I felt pretty good going into the offseason.
Wasn't that Jay Feaster?
No, Jay Feaster was assistant GM.
Okay.
It was, oh my God, he's Rick Dudley.
Oh,
yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah. So Duds, at the end of the year, Tortorella was like, I was up for a contract, and Torch was like, did you like it here? I'm like, I loved it. He's like, okay, because, you're a veteran D for us. You're going to play a ton. This is great. We're so happy to have create some stability here. And then fast forward to, 2 months later on draft day, I get a phone call from Rick Dudley saying, we've traded you to the Islanders. Thanks for everything. So it was a little bit of shock. But then, like you said, Landon, going to the Islanders, a little bit of an unknown. Peter Laviolette, newer coach, obviously. Did not, even though I played against him in that 94 Olympics, he was a captain of the U.S. team, didn't really know him. And to be honest, the first game of the year, I didn't play that much. Kevin Haller was our veteran D. and he had one of those nagging high groin injuries. I think he had a couple surgeries, and that was his only game he played. That was the last game of his career he played. And it took about a good probably 4, 5, 6 games to earn Lavi's trust. And from there, it was my 3 best years of my career. And he would play, pardon my French, he played the shit out of me. I was playing 30 minutes a night. It was amazing. Hockey just got so easy because you're just going back out there, and it was a lot of fun.
So from the island to Chicago, Calgary to Phoenix, and finish in Columbus, I would presume the 1,108 games that you played in the NHL would be considered your, triumphant memory.
Yeah, obviously a ton of great memories. I was shocked how proud I was of playing 1,000 games, because I don't think, once again, kids don't think of that. Kids think of making the NHL. Kids think of, hoisting the Stanley Cup, stuff like that. And my 1,000 game journey was a lot of moving, a lot of coaches, tons of support from family and friends. One of the best parts about it, I was in Phoenix. I dealt with groin issues ever since my first couple of years in Vancouver. So I was in and out of the lineup with small injuries. And my 1,000th game was actually when we had the celebration. And normally you play 1,000 games and they have a party 2 weeks after because they don't want to jumble around. But I kept kind of missing games. And I had, maybe 100 people come in from all the other cities I lived in. A bunch of friends and family from Ottawa come in. And it was overwhelmingly amazing. It really was. So that was definitely one of the highlights of my career.
Just out of curiosity, do you think Phoenix is a hockey town?
I do. It's not a obviously traditional hockey town. You could walk down the street and ask someone if they know any of the Phoenix Coyotes, and the only person they would know is Shane Doan. But the Phoenix Coyote fans were real. And it was great. Obviously, I had, as a team, 3 really good years there with playoff runs, and it was incredible. It was like what you would expect from an Edmonton, a Winnipeg, all those towns, where we're landing at 3 a.m. and there's thousands of people at the airport waiting for us. Like it was awesome. And for an older guy with a family, it was a great place, because, like I said, you could go do anything and you wouldn't really get hassled. Ironically, myself, Donor, Derek Morris, Michael Roosevelt, we all had boys who played on the same team, and we could go to rinks and people weren't like super fan crazy about us either. They knew we played, but it was a very subdued in a good way kind of place.
And then, we started with international. I'm just curious, during the lockout, you played it in Sweden for Modo. How was that, and how'd you end up there out of all the other places?
Yeah, well, we had arguably one of the best teams ever put on paper. Had Forsberg, Naslund, the Sedins, Matthias Timander, Hans Janssen, Paris Vartvedet from Atlanta. Like half our team was NHLers, and like pretty good ones too. And Peter Forsberg's dad was the coach. And he was the nicest coach I've ever had, probably too nice. And I was really good friends with Marcus. So Marcus and I kind of came up once he got traded to Vancouver from Pittsburgh. We were both there for the Tom Rennie era, and we were both kind of Keenan's whipping boys early on, because he saw a lot of potential in us, and we weren't playing up to the level he expected. And we both ended up having great careers there for Mike Keenan. And so we always had that bond. And then, I stayed in Long Island during the lockout and fell in love with that place. And but then when it kind of kept dragging on, I'm like, I should go skate somewhere. And Marcus had just gone over, and he's like, do you want to come live with me and play here? And it just seemed like a no-brainer. So I went over for, I think it was a couple months, and it was fun. And, we got steamrolled by Zdeno Chara's team, who he was still, he was already a Hall of Famer in my world. That guy is amazing on every level. It was myself, Dan Heinote on our team, and on their team, I think it was like Mike Johnson and Zdeno were the two imports, or maybe Zdeno didn't even count as an import. I think they ended up winning the whole league. They won the championship. They were so good. But it was kind of funny because, like I said, I looked at our roster. I'm like, we should be skating circles around all these guys. And it was a different game. They moved the puck. The biggest shock for me is, so this is obviously before guys were really doing a lot of privates. And they would at least once a week have a skills coach come on for the whole team. And these young Swedes would look at me in shock and be like, you actually play in the NHL? Because their skill was so much higher than my skill was. And I would explain to them, well, it's a different game over there. You kind of have to have some skill, but there's a lot of other things. And they understood that, but they were just floored at my lack of skill compared to theirs.
Did you just say go into the corner and let's see how your wrist turns out?
Yeah. And the funniest part is I was not a tough guy at all. But they thought I would fight them in practice because they were still like, the NHL is so tough. And I'm like, well, it's a tough game, but it's not really like that. But it was a great experience. Modo is obviously a very historic hockey town with all the players coming out of there. So I really appreciated that. And we had a really good time, even though we didn't succeed as a team.
You talk about skill. You were famous for your shot. You had the big shot from the point. I was curious. You had a wood stick?
I played with a wood stick until, some people think I am the last player to play with a full wood stick. And it might be true because I don't know the exact date. I know it was the end of my second season in Phoenix. I was using Coho, I'm not sure what it was, whatever. Coho kept changing brand names. And the factory changed locations and the wood they used was different. And my stick was it was flexible. I used to use like a 110 flex with extra fiberglass tape. It was a log. And all of a sudden they came in, they were soft. And I ran out and I broke my last stick. And I had all the stick manufacturers make me patterns, right, of the one pieces. And they were just completely different. And I just was not able to switch. And it was one game we were playing in Anaheim. And I had a pattern that they made me. I had a Robert Lang pattern, Peter Mueller pattern, and a Shane Doan pattern. I tried mine in warm up. Didn't work. I think I went to Robert Lang's pattern the first period and the puck kept rolling over my stick. And I think it was the second period. I scored a goal with Shane Doan's pattern. And to the rest of my career, I used Shane Doan's pattern with my name on it. And it was an Easton stick. And I don't even think Easton makes sticks anymore. But and a curve, my pattern looked nothing like my wood pattern too, because it was just such a different feel.
And it was just like changing. Is this like changing your golf clubs from steel shafts to graphite?
I honestly, I think it maybe even worse for me because I tried for probably a year and a half of build up to do it because all these, even our trainers, Stan Wilson and Phoenix, like, all right, like this is embarrassing. Like you're the only player of the wood stick. Like, and I'm like, and for some reason, I think most kids can shoot way harder with the composite. I could actually shoot harder with wood. I think I used to lean into it more. I don't know.
But I would assume you had much more control of where the puck was going with wood, correct?
I think so. Like I just everything about it. But then the composite sticks, everything is, quicker, lighter. Once I figured it out, it was okay. But I just, I was like a dinosaur.
When everyone was using those and you still had the wood, like, did you have to be careful with your stick going stick on stick? Because I'd imagine the wood's going to go through those early composites pretty easily.
Oh, well, you remember like the first few years, every time a guy would take a one-timer, it would snap in half. And the nice thing about a wood stick, even if it broke in the shaft, you could finish your shift. Because I used to crack it when I take one-timers sometimes. But on a penalty kill, if you cracked it cross-checking a guy, you could still play with it. Where the composites, they just, completely disintegrate and you're skating around like a chicken with your head cut off.
Yeah. I always remember the big shot from the point with Adrian Aucoin. So that's kind of cool. Adrian, hey, listen, this has been fantastic. Oh, hey, by the way, what kind of dogs do you have?
2 golden retrievers.
Okay.
Yeah. Just put a lot of miles on them. That's between my 5 kids and those 2, I seem to never be at home.
And if anybody's asking, what are you doing these days other than enjoying your family?
Yeah, this is the first year. So when I retired, I got a call from Stan Bowman asking if I want to do development. That's another reason why we came back to Chicago. So I was working with Rockford, their minor league team, and their young D. And then I did that for almost 2 years. Long story short, my wife broke her leg and lost hearing in an ear like in the same week. 5 young kids at home. So I took a step back and started coaching my kids. And I never went back to the pro game. And until this year, I've been coaching my kids. So 4 of my 5 played hockey.
Wow.
My youngest, 2 of my boys are actually playing in Sarnia in the OHL right now. And my youngest, a 16-year-old, he just got drafted there this summer. So it was the first year that I have not been coaching any hockey at all. But I do seem to be in rinks almost even more because we just seem to be traveling to watch the 3 boys play all the time.
Have you reminded them that with the new rules, you can go from the OHL to the NCAA like you did?
Yeah, they know it. Yeah, they trust me. These kids know everything now. They know more than we do.
Adrian, this has been a treat. Thanks very much.
All right, thanks, guys.
Adrian Aucoin. Landon and I will be back after this on 100% Canucks.
All right, listen up. Today I want to talk about giving 110%. Giving 100% means giving everything you got. Giving 110% means giving 10% more than is humanly possible. If we're going to win as a team, we need 100% of you guys giving 110% 100% of the time. If only 50% of you guys give 110% and 50% of you guys give 100%, I guarantee you 100%, we'd only win 50% of our games. Suppose 75% of the 110% gave only 50%. And 50% of the 100% gave 25%. And 75% of the 110% were not feeling 100%. Then we'd be in a heap of trouble. That's why we need 100% of you guys giving 110% 100% of the time. Okay. Let's go out and play some hockey.
Thanks to Adrian Aucoin for joining us. Landon, before we started, I told Adrian, we'll be 25, 30 minutes. The good news is most of the talking was Adrian, so that's okay. I don't mind. I always get told I talk too much on these things, so that's a fascinating story. I love the story about the wood stick. I really do. It's one of those ones. If you remember Adrian from the point, it was a rocket. But like Al McInnes, he could position the puck and he could shoot the puck with such velocity with a wood stick as opposed to the at one point aluminum or whatever they were, and then the graphite stuff. So
yeah, and like his shot, like it was one of those, and we've talked about it. Like there's hard shots and then there's heavy. Like his was heavy.
Evan Bouchard's heavy. Evan Bouchard's a heavy shot. Exactly,
right? Like it looks different coming off of his stick. And the fact that it was a wood stick, like I remember watching as a kid, and because he was a good player and he'd shoot and he'd play on power plays and stuff, like you're watching, and like it just looked like, he said it, like he played with a log. Like the thing didn't flex anywhere. He said 110 flex with extra wrap on it. Like that thing, you could jump up and down on it. It's not going to break. I couldn't even imagine what it was like for him trying to switch because it was night and day difference. But, that's one of those that it's a fun trivia fact that like doesn't really matter. But if I was him, I'd love to know that I was one of the last guys to use a wood stick.
What flex did you use?
I was 85, and if I were playing now coming up, I'd be in the mid-70s.
Yeah.
Like everyone's gone so much lower. They were doing it in my last few years of playing, and I tried multiple times because, just taking a snapshot, you didn't even have to lean on the stick. The thing would go. But my hands and a lighter flex, trying to catch a pass, stick handle, it was already not pretty. It got pretty gruesome. So I just kept my heavier one, and that was it.
I remember doing a hockey game in Montreal. Gosh, well, it was a Calgary-Montreal game. And just happened to get into these conversations because I'm not a hockey player. I like playing golf, so I'm always fascinated by the shaft, and whether it's stiff or whether it's a seniors or a regular. But Johnny Gaudreau was playing for Calgary at the time, and he was 65.
Yeah,
it was actually the trainer actually told me he uses a youth stick because that's what it was. And Shea Weber playing in the same game was 125.
Yep.
and so
okay, but
125. Aucoin was only 110. Weber, sitting in Kelowna right now.
I would say though, if
125.
If Aucoin had extra fiberglass wrap on his, it might have said 110, but it was probably 120 or 25.
Yeah,
but the crazy part about that example is Johnny Gaudreau was not a big man. So 65 to him, I see that, especially with how guys have it. The fact that Brett Hull was using a 75 flex and taking one-timers like he did makes absolutely zero sense to me. Yeah. I don't understand it.
Well, that's why he's a 700 goal scorer, right?
Yeah, and I had 7.
By the way, so the Canucks can return to practice on Tuesday the 17th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They can go on the ice. They can go into the room earlier that day, but they can't go on the ice until 2 o'clock Pacific time. So I'm wondering if the NHL will have spies in every arena with stopwatches, making sure they don't go out too early. I'm sure in many ways this has been a good respite for the hockey club. Get away from the pressure, get away from what has become such a disappointing season.
Yeah, honestly, I'm really looking forward to seeing the guys and just seeing what they look like off first glance.
Well, they're going to be tanned.
They'll be tanned, unless they're like me and they go white, red, white. But hopefully they've got a better option than me. But I imagine just seeing them they're gonna look lighter, they're gonna have had some fun and getting away from the season, like you said, and knowing that they're coming back. And honestly, if it was me, and I imagine a lot of guys and teams are going to be looking at this the 50 whatever games before don't matter. They don't count. They don't anything. We got what's left. We had, was it 24 games left? 23, somewhere in there. I don't know why I thought you'd just have that off the top of your head, John. But
no, because I actually do games for 5 teams, and so
well, then that's why I said I don't know. I do for 2, and I know one of them have 24 games left. But anyway, breaking that up, say it is 24, breaking it up into 5-game segments, and the last one being 4. And as personally and as a team, just trying to set little goals and find ways to make really good use of the games that are left. The outcomes don't matter, but the work in them, and on top of that, the almost being able to use them as practice, right?
25 games, by the way, 25.
One off. Well, perfect. Even better for my 5-game segments. So, but my point is just the fact that you can look at it, break it down, and really use it as live game practice. Right? If you've had a thought about trying someone in a spot or tweaking the PK a little bit for a different look that you've wanted to try, try those things right now. That's what you've, I don't want to say earned in the first 50 games of the season, but in a sense, that's where you're at right now. So take full advantage of it.
Yeah. It's almost like, the team's going to be going through a probationary period now.
100%.
And everybody's going to be proved. Hopefully Marco Rossi's back to play. Mm-hmm. Hopefully Williams back to play. All the young guys that have made a little bit of a difference. It'll be good for them, for a couple of the defensemen to like Villander to have 25 more games of experience before the summer comes. So it'll be fascinating to see what happens. right away. It's also going to be fascinating to see what the team looks like after March the 6th, which is the trade deadline.
Just because you brought up Verlander there, like, this has been a condensed year. Every rookie is going through this, right? Like, a first year in the NHL is a lot already, and now it's this schedule. It's a different thing. But the fact that, like, he flew back to Sweden for a bit, like, he's going to get back, go see his mom. Go see his friends and family. Go train a bit there with people that he's really comfortable with, that he's grown up with. Go have some fun smiling on the ice and come back with that. And all the other guys are kind of doing the exact same thing. So it's a real good opportunity in a not great year to really try and maximize the time that is left.
Well, and really, it hasn't been a great year. It's been a disappointing year, and there's a lot of people that are pissed off with what's gone on in Vancouver. But it's you have to try to make something positive out of a really, really negative scenario, and in many ways it's like the difference between a cup half full and a cup half empty. So we'll see what happens. Thanks for this, Landon.
Yep. Thanks again.
We will talk to you next week on this edition of 100% Canucks.